Welcome, ladies and gents. I'm James Brinkroff, and this is the SOMA review. Let's just first look at what SOMA was meant to be, and let's get it from their perspective. SOMA is a sci-fi horror game from Frictional Games, the creators of Amnesia, The Dark Descent. It is an unsettling story about identity and what it means to be a human. That comes straight from at least the marketing side. This game was great. I definitely would recommend it to anyone that really enjoys a good story, that wants to think a little bit more. I'm not usually like always all over the, oh, well, that's philosophical. Like, that gets me thinking a bunch. Well, or a lot. And just, it takes a lot to get me into that kind of thought pattern or thought process. I really don't like it when the whole game is all about, wow, what happens? What does it mean to be human? When in reality, you can just think of that without the game. With Soma does it. It gives you this journey. You get to see who you are in the beginning. You go through until the end, wondering, well, what would my experience really be like if I was this person that I'm playing right now? If I actually, and spoiler, if I wasn't a person, if I was this embedded conscience, what it is as a copy of my memories into this hardware. So I have the software, my brain, which is copied into a hardware, or into something that's, it's really hard to explain. It's this robotic, half robot, half human entity, and you move about it throughout the game. So it gets you thinking about that. I really like that, and I don't usually run into games that get me really thinking at least about my own humanity and what it would be like if I lost my body but my conscience was still there. For example, if we had VR that was you hooked, directly into your brain or something like that. That's what it kind of felt like with Soma, where what if you lost your body, but then you woke up and you still were a part of reality, but you weren't really human, just your mind. Get you thinking about like stuff like that. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a spoiler, and hopefully you enjoy my shirt today. It kind of doesn't work well with the green screen, but that's fine because we have this awesome background. I love this background. I love the art and the screenshots. Beautiful game, by the way. Is it the most beautiful of the year or the past few years? I would definitely say they didn't have a it just doesn't seem like they had a AAA budget for graphics, or if they did, they actually put it into what really mattered, which was the story and the gameplay. The gameplay was, I mean, you can't have a game without decent gameplay mechanics. Those were good. They had stuff you could play with, which was both a good thing and a bad thing. I spent the first 30 minutes at the beginning of the game just playing around with everything, and then once I got done with playing with everything, I couldn't find what I was looking for. So I got distracted and forgot kind of what I was supposed to be looking for. Definitely an immersive game. Definitely an immersive world. Some of the things that were that stood out to me in the game were, one, a horror game Amnesia. Soma makes a better post-apocalyptic sci-fi than it does a horror. The game also, it scares you, and it does it well when it does scare you, with the atmosphere, and then they'll do the jump scares and the music. When those kind of come together, it is pretty freaky. I had probably 3 or 4 moments of those, and to be honest, 2 of those were because I was being chased, and I don't like being chased. That's what makes games freaky for me, is when I'm getting chased by something. That being said, the atmosphere that the atmosphere from the art style, the sound style that they went with, the sound effects and whatnot, it really did freak me out. But it takes a little bit more than that just to make a horror, right? I mean, I could listen to a soundtrack and get the same thing if I wanted, get a little freaked out. So I definitely wouldn't call it a horror. Had some interesting puzzles, and I actually thought, for the most part, they were pretty decent. They were easy enough. They didn't get you. There was one puzzle that was a little frustrating. Towards the end of the game, that was frustrating. That took me a little longer. The other ones were pretty quick. I was actually surprised. Sometimes puzzles can get, especially if they're a little bit more difficult, they can get in the way for me. In no way is that a bad thing. I do enjoy my puzzles. I love Portal. But yeah, for the most part, I wouldn't say puzzles were a stumbling block in this until the end. Stealth. That was probably the big minus of this game, which was good for me, because I don't do stealth very well. And so in the end, it paid off for me because I was able to progress through the game faster. Stealth was not done very well in this game. So those are a couple of my thoughts. I thought it was great. The story, another spoiler alert, it's post-apocalyptic, essentially. A comet hits the Earth, wipes everyone out on the Earth. You're stuck in this research facility, essentially underwater, and you have to find a way to save humanity in a way. So, yeah, I mean, it really did feel more which I like. I liked that I was expecting one thing and I got another. And I like the thing, but I like both horror and post-apocalyptic, and they can be both together, obviously. But I didn't feel like I was doomed in the end, or towards throughout the game. I'm like, well, I think I'm gonna make it. I'm not gonna tell you if you do or not, but I probably already did. Oh well. Actually, no. Feel good to find out that on your own. Because yes, you just have to figure that out on your own. You have to play it. It's not cut and dry, like, yeah. Play it. You'll figure it out. I actually really enjoyed the ending. Really enjoyed the ending. I was a little worried at first when I ended the game, but I did a good job. Okay, first the good. So we're gonna So I already talked about this. I already mentioned a bunch of things that were good, bad, but let's straight out just say what was good, what was bad, and then I'll go over some scores for two different gamer types. Immersive world. You feel like you are underwater. You really do feel like you're underwater, not in space. And it's great. It's like BioShock. BioShock had a great atmosphere too, but this really felt like you were deep underwater, and if you went out into the water, you're possibly doomed. That's what it felt like. Kind of like a fog of war kind of thing, like in Silent Hills, where you can't see that much further ahead of you. If you're out in the water, you can't see that much further ahead of you, which is a good thing, which is good. Created an immersive world, great. Deep characters. I thought it had deep characters for horror. Oftentimes, characters will have deep. They'll be deeper on the more scary aspects of what really makes them scary. Like, if you have a clown, but then you added a couple extra parts to that clown, it makes it scary, whereas it's just a clown. These characters were more in their personalities, how you interacted with them, and just how the story unfolded with the characters. And that being said, the story unfolds great. It's just like reading a book to me. It wasn't it was slow at the first, which is okay. It makes it harder for you to get into it, but it does. It was more of a steady, it was pretty good. You got to understand throughout the whole game what was unfolding before you, and it was not like one big chunk in the middle, one big chunk at the end. No, it was. I felt like once you got past the beginning, which was fine, because the beginning was kind of the tutorial side of things. I wish they did a good job. I mean, I learned how to pick up stuff, which I wasted a lot of time in this game. That being said, those could be considered distractions. I wouldn't. It added immersion to the world. Like, I could pick up stuff, that was cool. That being said, I didn't really feel like there was that many distractions in the game, which is, I want to put on both the good and bad, but I'm not going to do that because it really felt like I was immersed in this game, and it felt immersed in this game, and it felt like, and there's nothing that really distracted me, like, oh hey, there's this achievement, or there's this weird thing I have to go do to get this achievement, which, by the way, the achievements are the cut and paste. Oh, you made it this far, achievement, yay. So those are always kind of like, it's nice to get those achievements, and in the end, like, hey, I got all the achievements, but they weren't really achievements. You just completed the game, or completed parts of the game up to the game's completion. So I liked it. I didn't think there was that many distractions. Besides, you can play with everything, and I thought that was a great thing. I also thought it was a bad thing that you could play with everything, because maybe I need to change some of my notes. It was kind of a distraction. I always thought, like, oh, because I'm always used to other games where, and it was a bad distraction in the sense that I thought I could play with this to actually interact with the world, and maybe, in other games you have med kits, stuff like that. There's no benefit to having all those things scattered about the world, except for you can play with them, and maybe sometimes break a window. And that was it. That was kind of a weird mechanic, but I enjoyed it. And there was a little distraction from it. Kind of bad. I thought it was bad. They could have done more with that. That being said, so we're done with the good, the bad. There's more good. That's just what I saw that was good. The bad, not really a horror game. It marketed itself as a horror game. I felt it was scary. It was a horror game, but I didn't feel like it was as much of a horror game as Amnesia was. And I could be wrong. That was my feeling. It was more sci-fi with horror tendencies, but I would almost say it's more post-apocalyptic. Just an apocalyptic story more than horror. Game wasn't optimized very well, I would say. I mean, I looked at maybe it's because it's larger levels, the way they stream the levels as a loading mechanism, that is. I did like, my system's not bad, and it would have been, and I didn't even play it at the max settings. With my 970, I have 970, 16 gigs of RAM, an i7. I've played games with better graphics at higher settings than this game. That being said, that's not a deterrent. Like, it's not a knock on the game. The game's still great. Just know that it isn't. They could have optimized it better. I felt like there was something that just wasn't optimized well. Maybe they could just patch it in. Maybe it's a graphics problem, but yeah, it's a downside. And the stealth mechanic doesn't work very well. It's really actually kind of easy. You just look. I didn't even have to really use the Q and E to just look. I didn't have to use that. I could just walk out. Oh, he's coming, and just walk the other way, and that's it. For the most part. Well, crawl or crouch away. Yeah, games. Crouch and crawling away. Yeah, I mean, there was one part where he kind of almost spotted me, but there wasn't too many times you can get cornered in that game, and I did get knocked out multiple times. I don't know if I ever died. I don't know if that's a game that's super easy to die in, which does help with the immersion of the world, but yeah, stealth. That's about it. So, for the scores, I would give this to anyone that's a story lover a 9.0 out of 10. I recommend for anyone that enjoys a story that makes you question humanity from a different perspective. 7.0 if you're an action horror person. If you want action, real horror, or are looking for something like Half-Life 3, then look elsewhere. This is not the game for you, and I put Half-Life 3 in there as a joke. Really though, if you're looking for an action-packed game, or a horror game, or an action horror, you can try it. You look at some of my videos of it, but it's not really geared to that type of person. I don't think it is. So, that being said, great game. Great game. Definitely recommend it. Get you questioning humanity. Not in like, oh, I'm gonna go commit suicide kind of way. No, it gets you just thinking like, well, what would it be like? That's interesting. What would it be like to be just a conscious entity that occupies this other entity? So you're the software, and the entity you occupy is the hardware, which is kind of like this, but do you have the feeling? I didn't get that from the game, but it still gets you thinking, can I still feel? How does that work? And then you also get to work with someone that doesn't have a body at all. They're just on the screen throughout the game. That also kind of gets you thinking, well, how would that be like? And they go through possibly some of the things that could happen with that, with time and feelings wise. So yeah, definitely check it out. At least check out my videos. You can watch them. I'll post them below for SOMA. It's about an 8 to 10 hour game, and play it.